Okay. So we're going to be looking at the very, very simple process, very, very cool process of setting up our Unreal scene so we can do our renders, which is part of our submission. Now, we've left this till, you could say, fairly late in the day because it's not something that is particularly hard to set up, um, especially under guidance, and it's not something that needs tons of time spent on it. You can set this up, do your renders within a day, less than a day, within an afternoon. Um, but obviously, those who've never used Unreal, or those who've used Unreal when it was Unreal 4, things are a bit different. Or, yeah, like I said, you've never actually touched the software. So, first of all, let's get in and actually start to look at Unreal. So I've downloaded Unreal for the first time, and I've been met with this. It's called the Unreal Launcher, and it's not the Unreal Engine itself. It's the Unreal Launcher, and it's got a lot of stuff in, like news. Fab is their asset store. Twinmotion is one of their products. This is like for architecture real-time visualization stuff, and your real-time catch, whatever. We don't care about that. We want to look at, if we come to library, we have this. We have engine versions, and on the left-hand side there, you got store. It's going to take me somewhere I don't want it to go. Library and Unreal. So it kind of connects to the Epic Game Store as well as the Unreal Engine. I'm really only ever concerned with the Unreal Engine and the library. So you'll probably be met with no versions inside here, or maybe a version which hasn't been installed. So you install a version. Now this is important just to know what version we're looking at here, because if for whatever reason you end up having to do this across multiple different systems, you just need to know what version of Unreal you're working on. But like I said, this whole process is something you can knock out in an afternoon. And when you come to use Unreal more and more, you'll get used to how it works. So as long as you know the version, it's cool. One nice thing about Unreal and its different versions, because it does have a lot of version updates, is that if you're building in, say, 5.3.1, if I install 5.3.2 and try and open a project that was 5.3.1, it's going to say, hey, this project's not to this version. If it's so far out of date, then it will say it cannot open, but if it's within a kind of spectrum of dates, it'll say, it will basically modify it. And if you're just dealing with a very, very simple scene, that's all good. If you've got tons of plugins, for whatever reason, like for Root Beer, I've used a lot of plugins, and I generally just download a lot of stuff to check it out, to have a play. So if there's plugins involved, it'll say kind of stuff. But like I said, we're not going to be using any of that. So install your version. Dead easy. You can add a version. You can choose that version. So you can even go back to some of the old 4 versions. Chaos, I think, means it's really unstable. But you add an engine, you choose it, and then you install it. Luckily, I've already got mine installed, and it takes a while to install. And when you first open it up, when you open it up, you'll say running, and on the other monitor, a bit behind the scenes there. What you don't see is I've got a little banner open up, which I can't drag over to show you, but it's like a little Unreal loading banner. And when you first open up Unreal, it will take a little bit of time because it needs to basically compile all the shaders for the first time, and that's the thing that takes the longest time. Cool. So when that's been done, you'll be met with this screen. And these are all different things that we can do in Unreal. So all your recent projects are here. If you're making a game, then here are all your basically starting points for a game: film, architecture, product, simulator, all that kind of stuff. We want game, obviously, and what we're going to choose is blank, because we don't want to have a first person, we don't want to have a third person, anything like that. But feel free to have a play with these, because these are really fun to look at. And I always say that it doesn't matter what you do, 2D, 3D, character, concept, whatever. It's good to be as technical as possible, and it's good to know these engines and understand how you in your discipline can utilize this engine. Just because it's a 3D engine doesn't mean that you have to do 3D. You'll be surprised that 99% of 2D games are actually built on a 3D engine, and it's how we get stuff working with like really nice parallax backgrounds. So I'm going to choose blank, and on the right hand side here, I'm just going to change. I'm not going to change anything. So blueprint, that's fine. Target platform, desktop, quality maximum, obviously. I don't want any starter content, and if I could turn on ray tracing if I've got, well, I have got an RTX card, so I can turn on ray tracing. If you've got a GTX graphics card, ray tracing won't work. If you've got an RTX graphics card, ray tracing will work. And ray tracing, it's just a different way that we process lighting, and it's got its pros and its cons, but I'm just going to put it on just so it's there. For this, it's not really that beneficial. And below there, you've got your project location, so I'm going to send mine to the desktop, and I'm going to name my project here. I'm going to call this Photo Setup, or Photo Set. So this is my my photography studio I'm setting up, and I'll create. And again, on the other monitor, I've got my little banner for Unreal that it's loading, initializing, processing shaders, If you've done this before, again, this will be a lot quicker. If you do this for the first time, it's going to be a lot slower. Cool, and then I'm met with this. So this is the Unreal setup. Yours might look a little bit different. I've seen some, even, you do all the same setups. For some reason, your outline is over here. The UI might be a little bit different, but don't worry about it. Because we can mess it's all this stuff is replaceable. Actually, no, this is set to my custom kind of set. I've moved stuff around, so I think this goes over here, like that. And you got place acts over there. I think this, okay, cool. I think this is more like it. Okay, so let's talk about the UI. Very, very simple. Now, this is similar to other softwares, but at the same time, it's kind of wacky how it's so simple. If you think about Maya's UI and ZBrush's UI, there's a lot of stuff going on. But all we're doing in Maya is modeling. Well, all we're doing, but what you can do in Maya is actually quite extensive. Same thing inside ZBrush. Technically, all you're doing is sculpting, but there's a lot of different stuff you can do. But if we think about Substance Painter's UI, it's very simple, especially up here. There's nothing, because really all you're doing is texturing. Now, really all we're doing inside here is making a game, but making a game is incredibly complex. It's an absolutely demanding, shockingly difficult thing to do. But the UI for the engine is really fun and really simple. And some of it's going to be very familiar. So we start at the very top, we've got drop-down menus, file, edit, window. These are similar things, but obviously these contains things that are a bit different. Now, a lot of this, 99% of this right now, you don't have to worry about, because we're not game developers. We're artists. We're going to look at the basic artist tools. If you find you get an itch for Unreal, absolutely look into it. I myself have, obviously. And yeah, it's really, really fun. So that's at the top there. Whoop. You've got a little docking menu here. Currently we've only got Untitled and there's nothing else docked here, but you can dock other windows that jump up, like your material editor window can go here. If you've got a graph editor window, it can go here. Instead of being floating. I quite like them having them docked, because I like everything. I don't like floating windows. If we look underneath there, we've got save, we've got open, and then we've got this selection mode here, which we're not going to look into, but these are things we can do. So we're currently in selection mode. You've got landscape tools, you can paint foliage, you can paint mesh. There is a really, really bad modeling system inside here that's new that I've wished it'd fix. Oh, just take out. No one likes it. There's a fracture system, which is quite fun. Brush edit, all this kind of stuff. Really important, you got this little cube with a crosshair, like a cross on it. This is a quick access menu to add stuff into the scene, and we're going to be using this for everything. And then you've got more complex stuff. So Unreal is built on this thing called blueprinting, which, unlike most other engines where you have to do hard coding in like CCS or Lua, Ruby, Java, that kind of stuff, this is built off blueprinting. You can do C++ scripting in this, but it's really famed for its blueprinting, and that's all that is. And this is stuff to do if we're doing like level sequencing or anything like that. This is all this. And then you've got basically play the engine. This is kind of like gameplay stuff right here. And then you've got platform. We don't have to worry. So forget all of this besides this one drop down. And I guess the save here on the left hand side. This is what we're going to use. And the rest of it, don't worry about it unless you want to go into it. Settings again, don't worry about it unless you want to go into it. So if we move down, we'll move down to the left. You might have this, you should have this. If you don't have it, this will be in Windows Place Actors. There you go. This again is just a bit like a quick. It's a little bit like this. It's a quick access menu for me for the most commonly used things. So I can quick access stuff. It's called Place Actors. Most things inside the inside Unreal are called actors or pawns. PAWN. Actors or pawns, because a pawn is something that's controlled by something, and an actor is something that acts upon something. Which, if you have ever done game development or ever looked into game development, makes complete sense. Cool. On the right hand side, we've got the outliner. This should be no new thing to anyone. The outliner is what's in the scene, so this will show everything that's in the scene, and it's quite fun and adaptable and actually organizable as well, which is quite fun, because in the old version it wasn't very organizable and it was a hell of a time to use. Underneath you got details here, which is basically anything you've got selected. So I've just selected this piece of terrain right here. It basically gives you all the details, and we're going to have a look at that kind of stuff later on. And then at the very bottom, I've docked it, so I've gone to Settings and Dock. Some say inside here somewhere. I just might not be seeing it. But by default, this is at the bottom of the screen. You have to actually click it, and it opens up like this. There we go. Yeah, Dock to Layout. There you go. So at the very bottom of the screen, you've got this little content and draw. You click and it opens up. I really don't like this personally, so I like having it open all the time. Cool. And your content here is where we're going to see everything. Again, the more you look into this as like a complex or a whole thing, what is a game engine, how to use it and stuff. This can get deep and quite busy. But for what we're going to use it for, it's going to be dead simple. Now let's have a look in the middle, right? The most important part, the viewport. So the viewport contains obviously our scene. As you can see, the sidebars are very modifiable, so I'm just going to open up a little bit. So this is the scene. This is the default scene, so let's have a look at what's going on. Top right, we've got a little bit of a layout thing. So I just clicked that little split box. It'll split it up into, you got different viewports. You got a front, a side, and a top down. So this is back, this is right, this is top. That's all good. I don't know anyone who uses this outside of anyone who's been very technical. You got your camera speed, so you can adjust your camera speed. This is so by default, Unreal clips everything or snaps everything. So this is your scale, and it scales to 0.25% of whatever you're scaling. So if you had something at say like scale 1, standard scale, and you scaled it up, it'd jump to 1.25. Then it'll snap to rotation 10 degrees, and it's snap to movement 10 units. So you can turn these off as well by clicking the little blue thing. Here we've got control how the object snaps to the surface. We've got this, which is cycles. You can see here it says cycles the transform gizmo coordinate system between local and world. That's exactly like what we'd have in Maya. And then you've got basically scale, rotate, move, and select. And luckily, Q, W, E, and R. So all this to scale, rotate, grab stuff, it's all Q, W, E, and R. So we should be very familiar with that. Over the left-hand side, you've got show, which is basically showing stuff. Again, do you want to show the grid? Do you want to show the fog? Do you want to show decals? Lit so this drop-down is how you visualize the scene. So currently we're set to lit, which is showing us the lighting. If we set to unlit, we turn off the lighting and we're just seeing basically the color of the scene. Wireframes. So detail lighting kind of doesn't really do much inside here. Oh no, I've scaled out too far. There we go. It doesn't really do much inside here. So what detail lighting is it gets rid of all. Basically, you see your normal map lit on a surface, so it gets rid of all the texture information and just sees the normal information. It's actually quite nice to show off detail. And just, have a play, have a look. Perspective. Well, this is all just your camera positions. Here, and there's some settings as well. All nice and good. So that's the little top bar thing there. Navigating around scene, you see as I'm actually moving around scene a little bit here. Navigating around scene is super easy. But obviously, sorry about that snurch was horrible. As per usual, Dave's got a cold at the weekend. So actually moving around the scene and actually looking around is actually super easy. So without holding anything on the keyboard, right click just basically orbits around your camera. It's like I'm looking. I'm a person looking around. So that's just holding the right click. Middle mouse basically pans you round up and down. So I'm panning at the minute. And left mouse basically turns our head on like a rotational axis. Very nice. Now if I hold right click on the mouse, if I hold right click on the mouse and then WASD, so W moves me forward. I can fly around, and obviously I go in the direction which I'm facing. D moves me backwards. S moves me sideways. D moves me sideways. Q lowers me down, and E raises me up. So, you know, I'm basically got flight controls. And this is really good when you're dealing with environments because you're going to be able to like literally fly around the scene. Now, what's also very fun is with right click held down, if you scroll up and down on the mouse wheel, if you just look at the right top right of the screen there, you might see the numbers kind of going up and down. So we're at 1.6 there, and then we're down to 0.7. Holding right click and then using your scroll wheel changes the speed of the camera. So if I lower it all the way to 0.1, I am technically moving. As you can see, I'm very, very slow. But if I do it, I'm going to go all the way up to 10. I'm zooming around, and this is a massive scene as well. This scene is like a huge canyon, a huge like flat basin. So that's quite fun. Again, if you're dealing with big environments, this is going to be helpful for you. And that's navigating around the scene. Super, super easy. So without going into any more technical stuff, let's just start to bring stuff in, and then we'll talk about the technical stuff related to that when we get there. Okay, so let's start bringing some stuff in. So I'm going to look at my content browser here, and it says drop files here, or right click to create content. So I'm going to go a little bit organized with this. I'm not going to be as messy as I could be. I am going to be a bit organized. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to add a folder. And in this folder I'm going to call this Geo for geometry. So that's where I'm going to put any geometry I'm using. I'm going to right click again, another folder, call this materials or mats. I'm going to add another one called textures. So there is a difference because we're getting technical now. Textures are flat images. Materials are materials. They're things that combine all these different things together to create a thing which is applied to a surface. And you'll see what I mean. Okay. So I've obviously got my head here that I've textured. It's all ready to go. It's a beautiful, you know, best texture I've ever done. Whatever. Let's actually send this out. Let's export this texture. So I've already got my head in the folder already. I've already exported my head. But from here, what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm exporting everything as good as I can. So I've got here, I've got my textures, whatever. File, export textures. And then my output, file type can be PNG, can be whatever I want. So I'm going to leave it as PNG. The only thing I'm going to do is, for this, I'm going to export it as 8K, so the highest resolution I can. I'm doing this over everything. This is a global setting. I can change it per object. And this kind of goes into what I was saying with, you know, if you're texturing something like a head and a body, your body is obviously going to be small. It's going to take up less UV space. So you have to make your texture size twice as big as your head, because obviously your head is in one UV, so it's getting all the pixels for that. But your body, because you're having to cram everything else of your body into one UV, doesn't have as much pixel information applied to it. So you would double the size of your body. So you could come in here and you could say, right, my if my body's going to be 8K, my head is going to be 4K. Whatevers. So I'm going to set that. We got a lot of output templates here, and I'm going to go in and just say Unreal Engine 4 packed, just because it's going out to Unreal Engine 4. I just want to make sure that I'm helping out a little bit. I'm not going to go into the crazy minutia, which is exporting like loads of technical maps. I don't want to do it just yet. If you want to do that kind of stuff, we'll be looking at it. I can help you out with that. And this is just a list of what is actually going to be sent out. Cool. So I've, because we're going to Unreal, I've chosen the Unreal Packed. We've also got the Unreal Subsurface Scattering. So, I'll do that one. Why not? And my destination, my output directory, I have already set up a file inside here. And I forgot what I've called it. There you go, found it. Unreal Head. So I'm going to put them into this folder. I set up a folder, not directly in Unreal, just to put stuff in. It's kind of like an archival thing. So Unreal Head, and I'm just going to select that. Boom. So that's where I'm going to put stuff. So yeah, my sizes. I'm going to do this as 8K just because it's this one texture. But obviously, if you're doing, multiple exports and you've got multiple different sizes, again, think about the head to body for like the full body sculpt. Your body, because it's basically in one UV, will be half the size of your head UV, which means it'll need to have double the amount of texture information. So it'll be, if you're doing your head at 4K, do your body at 8K. If you're doing your head at 2K, do your head at 4K. That kind of stuff. And yep, so there we go. So I'm going to export, and I'm going to let it through. So let it do its thing. So what it's going to do, it's going to run around, and you might see a few little red icons pop up, but as long as when it comes to the end it says successfully exported, like that, you're all good. So then we're good. So let's just close that. Close that. I'm going to open up my folder. I'm going to find Unreal Head. There we go. So inside here I've got my my retopologized head, and I've got my textures there. So what I'm going to do is, I don't know why I'm doing it off screen. I'm going to drag. I'm going to go into textures. I'm going to drag my PNGs into here. Oh. JNG? Oh, I think I might have set a wrong export type actually there. All right. Let me go back to my exports again. Export textures. JNG, yes I did. I don't know what JNG is. PNG, excuse me. Export, please. Okay. That was my bad. Yeah, I accidentally clicked something called a JNG. I don't know what a JNG is. But same jazz. It'll go through, it'll export all the stuff, it'll do its things. Boom, there we go. And I'm just going to go through and delete those JNGs. I don't know what a JNG is. Bang. Cool. PNGs. That's what we like. So if we go back to Unreal now and then open up our folder, then we click and drag. I'm just going to drag them all in. So I'm in the texture folder, dragging them in. There they go. And we can click them, and then it'll bring up this little image window. Basically, this is like a preview window. We won't be doing anything within these windows. But boom, there you go. Nice, good. And then I do the exact same thing. So I'll just go back to content here, and I'll go to Geo for my geometry, and I'm going to drag in my head. So now your head's going to be a bit different. It's going to ask me some stuff. I'm going to let this just do whatever it wants to do. If you come to go a bit deeper into Unreal, hopefully you do. I mean, Unreal is, again, it's an amazing piece of software. You kind of need to know how to use it. It's what the industry is built on, outside of obviously a few indie stuff. I'm going to just import all. Let it do what it wants to do. You might get a little bit of a menu, like an error message thing. This is because it's an FBX, and FBXs normally have animation applied to them. It's basically just saying there's no information for that, so whatever. It does, nothing's actually wrong there. Cool. So what we brought in into the geo content here is a head. So I can double click that and I can actually look at that. Hey, look at there. There's a head. And this is again a little preview window. So I can have a look around. That's all good. And because I didn't change any of the settings, it has brought in this default material. And I'm actually just going to delete that. Force delete. Get rid of that. I don't need it. So our head now has no material assigned to it. That's why it's all checkerboarded now. Cool. So I'm going to go back up one again. So we've got our textures inside here, and we've got our geometry inside here, which is great. So I'm going to go into mats for material. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to material and create material. I'm going to call this, you know, head underscore mat. Material. Now there is a real convoluted naming convention that we should be using when we're doing proper game development stuff, but for this I'm going to keep it nice and simple. I don't want to bog anyone down with that kind of stuff. So I've got geometry, I've got material, I've got textures. So obviously inside here, if you're doing everything at the same time, you could make another folder inside here and have this be like head textures. So I can grab all my head textures there and just drag it into there. Move here. Big it about. There we go. Organization. I like me some organization. Cool. Now, we've brought stuff into the scene, but we're not going to use this particular scene to set up our scene. We're going to make our own scene from scratch. And all I need to do is go to File at the top, a new level. And I'm just going to click on the far right here, empty level. There we go. And then we should be met with a big black void, which is nice. So let's start bringing some stuff in. So I'm going to go to my geo. I'm going to start dragging in my head. So I'm just going to bring my head in right there. And one thing with Unreal that I really want to kind of make a point of is when you drag stuff into the scene, it doesn't always place it in like the middle of the scene. You know, when in Maya, when we sometimes add objects, it adds it to like the 000 position of the scene. It doesn't do it here. So in your detail tab here, just look out for where the location is. This is currently all over the place, so I'm just going to set all these to 0. Now it's in the middle of the world. F to focus as per usual. And I'm just going to rearrange my UI as well because I don't like it like this. So I'm going to drag my outliner and put it with my place actors there, because then it means my detail tabs is nice and big. Now, we've got no lights in the scene, even though it says lit up here. We've got no lights in the scene, so what we're seeing here is an unlit scene. And I just brought my head in and positioned it into the middle of the world. All good. So before I do anything else, let's just make our head look a little bit nicer. So I'm actually going to not do anything on this head right here in the scene. I'm going to do it on this head right here. But I'm going to do it a bit of a long, kind of roundabout way. On this head, I'm going to place a material, but I'm not going to place a material in the actual scene here. I'm going to place a material when I double click it inside here. So this head will always have this material assigned to it. But the material I've got prepared for it is currently blank. So I'm just double clicking it to go to the material editor. I'm going to actually dock this. There we go. It's blank, so there's nothing on it. So that's where I bring in those images that I brought in before. So go back to content, I got my materials. So my head. I'm going to bring in the materials that I actually want to use. So I've got roughness, I've got normal, I've got height, and I've got metallic, and I've got color. These two I don't need to use. So I'm actually going to ignore those, or I could delete them. This is my height, and this is my material metallic, because obviously I've not got any metallic or height information. So I'm just going to grab my color, control grab my normal, and control grab my roughness, and I'm just going to drag these into here. There you go. So I'm going to redock this. So the material editor, if anyone's used Blender, this might not be too dissimilar to it. But the material editor is a node-based system, just like everything inside Unreal. It's all node-based. And if you're doing simple stuff like this, it's really easy. But when you come to do more complex complex materials, it can get a little bit complex, and you can build a material from scratch in here. So I'm just pressing tab to open up this menu here, and there's loads of stuff we can do just for materials. But we'll keep it nice and simple. So I dragged in my 3 images there, and it's given me these 3 texture samples, which is what they call textures, like pre-made images inside of Unreal. So we've got 3 text samples. And on here we've got some stuff that I could go on about for ages, but I'm not going to. The most important thing is RGB. This is what we call a socket or a pin. This RGB is just the color information. Whatever we see here, it's that information. So I'm going to drag the RGB and I'm going to put it into base color. Now you see on the ball here that we get some information. I'm going to drag RGB out and I'm going to put this into roughness. And now we've applied whatever roughness information is on there. And then I'm going to drag in the normal map out, put it to normal. There we go. So now we have the normal information. And on this little window here, I can come down to these little small icons, and I can change that to be like a plane, which is horrific. So I can see the information that's been applied to the surface there. All good. So that's cool. The material is kind of set up already. Now, it's different on the version we've got at the school to my version. Because on the version they've got at school, you can actually change some of the numeric values of stuff on the actual material here. I believe the one at school is a more updated one than mine. I've not updated mine in a while. If you are working on one like this where you've not got the little numerical fields to change stuff in like metallic and specular, what you can do is right click and add a constant. Now a constant, you got 3 of them. You got a constant 1, constant 2, constant 3. A constant 1 is just a numerical value, 0 to 1. You can ignore constant 2s. A constant 3, so I'm going to check constant again. So I'm right clicking in the scene to do that, to bring up this little search bar. So if I type in constant, and I go for constant vector 3, it's color, RGB. But I'm just going to put this in. This constant 1 is literally just like a 0 to 1 numerical value. So if you think about numerical values being 1 being white, 0 being black, is what it is here. So this is currently black. So I'm going to put that into specular. Specular is the overall control of the shininess of a surface, whereas roughness controls the detail of that. So this is set to 0 at the minute, so this is matte as anything. This is completely matte here. If I change this value to 1, super shiny. So I can control this kind of stuff inside here. So I've added those in, and that's all I'm going to add in. Nice and simple. In fact, you know, sometimes you don't even need to add this in if you're on the version which has the numerical values here. So once I've done that, what I'm going to do is hit apply. And apply is great because if you've got a material that's already assigned to a surface and you're doing some changes, apply will basically update the material, but then it'll update on the actual object in the scene as well. You know, Unreal is amazing for this kind of stuff. It's very, I don't know what you call it, developer friendly. You know, you don't need everything to be absolutely finished. You can do these kind of like mass updates, or you know, if you're changing a texture and that texture has been applied to, you know, 1,000 objects in a scene, when you hit apply, it's going to start to update all the objects which carries that material. It's so good. And then I'm going to save the material, or Control S. There you go. So I'm saving the material. It's all good. So I'm going to redock that like that. I'm only undocking it just to show you what it's doing. Cool. So I'm going to go back to content and I'm going to go back to geo. So I'm going to click on my head, open up this, and here's where I actually change the material. The camera's zooming everywhere. So up here you've got material slots and you've got a material, but currently it's this checkerboard material. If I open this up, actually I got to look back. What did I call that material? Because this is going to be important. I'm going to call it head. Put a Q in there for some reason. head matte. There you go. So I need to know what the name of this material is, and this is really fun. So I'm going to go to it. I'm going to click this there. So I'm going to click this little drop down. I'm going to start typing head, and then that's my head material. Boom, and it's been applied. There we go. So I can save that. It's all good. And any changes I make to that material will be updated to this automatically. We don't even need to reassign anything. It's all automatic. Cool. So now we've assigned the texture to the surface. Now it's actually time to actually make the scene a little bit nicer. And also update something, because my head is really small, because this is a very, very small version of the head. I believe this is, if I bring up the grid, oh, it's not so small, but it's in Unreal, it's quite small. Unreal uses real world scale, so every one of these, like this grid here, is a meter. So actually it's not, you know, that's about right for a head. It just feels small, so I'm just gonna move it up for the time being. Right, let's start making the scene. I'm gonna bring in a plane to put the head on top of. I'm not just gonna have this in a void for now anyway. I'm going to bring in a basic shape. There we go. Or in fact, I can come up to place actors. I can come up to this little geometry tab here and then go find box. Or I could come up to here and come to shapes. And find plane. I'm just going to put a plane there. And again, set that to the middle of the world. And then I'm going to scale this up 50 by 50 by 50. There we go. And in fact, I probably need to make a new material. So I'm just going to make a new material, call this base underscore matte. And this is what I'm going to put on this material here on the floor. And inside here I am going to use one of those vector 3s. So I'm going to right click, constant, let's type in constant, and go to vector 3. There we go. I'm going to plug that into the RGB. And then I'm just going to change this to be kind of like quite a bright grey. Like that. And then I'm going to make a constant 1, plug that into specular, Control V to copy, plug that into the roughness, and do it again one more time, plug this into the metallic, just in case I want to control any of those values. So there's all V at the minute, it's all 0 at the minute, so there's no metallic value, there's no specular value, but there is 1. If it's set to 1, there is a roughness value of 1, basically making it the roughest surface. So a proper rough surface. Save that, apply it, go in, and I'm just going to click and drag that into the material on the right hand side there. There we go. So now the surface is white. But we've still not got any lights in the scene. So we're actually going to start to bring in some lights. So I can do that even on this place actors tab here, or in the tab here. I'm going to light, so I'm going to bring in a point light. A point light it's a bulb. It's essentially a bulb. It's one of my favorite lights just because it's so useful. And it's got a drop off, it's got a fall off. Oh, my null maps are really not nice. Not liking that on top of the head there, I've just noticed. It's a really nice light. You can see that kind of snapping as well, so it's snapping to 10% increments. So I'm just going to turn that off. There we go. I'm also going to scale my head up a bit. There we go. So looking here. I don't know why my head normals are freaking out inside Unreal. I don't care. Okay, so that's a point light. I know why. I think I know why. Anyway, I'm not going to bother with it. So with the light selected, we can look at our right hand side here and go, okay, what is going on inside the settings menus, the details menu? So obviously we've got transform, that's position in the world, light. So intensity, 8 CD. CD stands for candelas, and that's the unit of light we're measuring. We've also got lumens, EV, and unitless, but we're going to keep it as candelas for now. You've got intensity, obviously. You got the color of the light. You've got attenuation, which is basically the throw of the light. So it can be a very, very intense light that's just in a small area, or it can be a very intense light which goes over a large area. I think it's source radius, which is how big the actual bulb is. So that's a big bulb. That's a little bulb. You can see how it affects the surface of my head a little bit. So these settings aren't necessarily going to be visible. Okay. So some settings in there for you to play around with. You've got spotlights, which is a spotlight, you know. See, that's not doing funny things to my head. I don't know why that. Oh, it kind of is. Yeah, spotlight is a spotlight. It's an alright light. I quite like it. It's just basically a point light with a unidirectional direction. But you got all the same stuff. You got attenuation, how far the light throws. The inner light cone, basically how intense the actual light is source in the middle is. The outer intense cone, so is it kind of like a real spotlight, or is it a big source of light? That's a light source again. Lots of fun stuff to play with. You've got rec light. This is probably my favorite light, actually. This is a rectangle of light. And I quite like this one a lot because it's got a really nice fall off. I quite like how the shadows work on this. But again, all the same stuff here. Attenuation, how big the light is. Source. You can see how that one actually affects the shadows a little bit. Oh, no, that one kind of affects the shadows. And then you got directional light. Now, directional light is an okay light. It's just a bit basic. It's a infinite light source in both directions, both forward and side to side. It's got no fall off, so there is no. The further away from the light you get, the darker it becomes. The shadows aren't super great. It's it's basic. It's it's a basic light source. It's used for a lot of stuff, and you have got skylight, which is used when you're making really nice environments, because it helps the light work a lot better. What I'm going to do is bring in a couple of point lights. I'm just going to start, making a bit of a light setup. So I'm going to hold Alt as well. Alt and drag makes me do a quick duplication. So I can make a couple of light positions, then one in front. How does that look? Nice. That's not bad. Not bad at all, that. What if I want to make one of these a little bit dimmer? So let's go for this to be a 4, maybe even a 1. We'll change this to be a 1 again. So darken that down, but then I've got that nice hot spotlight. But maybe that spotlight there, that not a spotlight, but a point light, which is acting like a spotlight. Maybe we'll set it to a 5. Oh, there you are. Okay. It's quite nice. Now, what you might have seen as well is when I look back at something, I'm looking in the dark there. I look back at it, you can kind of see how it gets brighter. This is called exposure or auto exposure, and it's okay. It's basically normalizing the light and scene and trying to act like human eyes, because obviously if we look in the dark and we look back at something bright, our eyes have to adjust. Now we can turn that off or change it in the game settings. This is a real kind of pain. Or in what we call EV100 here, and there is like a legit science to this. You can see there, set exposure value to the camera using the specific EV100 exposure. Exposure equals 1 dash 1 to science. This science. So I can turn that off and adjust this. So the further you come down, the less intense the light is being adjusted. So I can come back here and say, okay, yeah, maybe those were okay being at 85. Well, yeah, 85. Let's go 85. Okay, so we got two nice little lights there. I'm gonna go maybe turn you into 100. There we go. So there's no exposure being forced onto the head, which I quite like, because then I have control over everything. And for what we're doing, this is perfectly fine. Obviously, when you're dealing with stuff with actual live games and stuff, you do have to really be in the science of what light. That's why lighting artist is such an important job, because you've got to know all this kind of science behind lights. Cool. So then you got some, you got some decent setups. Quite nice. Now here's a really fun thing we can do as well, is I can move my camera into a really nice position and go like, okay, there for instance. Control 1. And then I can move here and go Control 2. So what I'm doing with Control 1 is I'm setting a camera bookmark, and Control 2 setting a camera bookmark, so I can set up these different camera angles. So Control 3, Control 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can set up all these different camera angles just using Control and whatever number, which is really nice, especially when you're doing your quick renders. Now I'm just going to grab that material. I'm going to have a play with this material. I'm going to set the specular value to, say, 1. But I'm going to set my roughness value down to, say, 0.25. So a bit of a shinier surface. Maybe my metallic value to 0.25 again. Okay. Apply. Save. Okay, so my floor's a little bit shiny now. Cool. And for those who've done photography as well, some of this might be actually some of that information might be actually useful for you, because currently all I've got is a floor below me and I've got 3 lights. But what if I want to do a little bit of bounce lighting? I can experiment with that. So I can come into here and go shapes, get another plane, bring it over. I'm going to make a new material because I'm going to be quite spicy with this. First of all, just move this up a tad. Make a new material. I'm going to let it bounce. And inside there, I'm going to have a constant 3 for my color. I'm going to have just a constant 1 to constrain those values. And this, I'm going to be like teal. In fact, I'm just going to keep it like that for now. Drag that on there. So you can see how it kind of reacts to the scene, the environment. There we go. So for this one, maybe for these two, maybe I have that little thing off screen a little bit. Or for this one, I might have to hide. Well, I can't really see it in this view. Maybe here, I'd have to just move it off a little bit. Bounce some of that light. To get fun with it. This is just this engine's so powerful. It's really, really fun to work with, and this is just a basic setup as well. Going into the lighting of this is really, really cool. I can also get another light. I'm going to get another point light here. I'm going to duplicate it off. So hold Alt. So I'll duplicate that one. I'm going to get it just behind my head. I'm going to make it attenuation very small. I'm going to make it blue. I'm going to move the base plate down. There we go. I'm trying to basically get a rim light. I can do that red. Like a red rim light. So I'm getting rid of the gizmos in the background by pressing G. G for gizmo. Cool. So those are using what I would call practical lights, which are like bulbs and stuff. Have a play, have an experiment. The great thing about it is you can just switch out lights in the outliner, you can literally just turn them off. So you can still have them in the scene. You just basically hide them by clicking the little eyeball on the side. Turn them on. So now all I've got is that. I've got that one light in the scene. So that might actually work for some of your some of the stuff. Especially if you're doing, why not use this for doing paint overs? Light something, get some nice kind of effects, and do a paint over. So yeah, very, very cool system. And like I said, that's using those practical lights. There's another light source we can use, which is going to give us a little bit of a different setup. And this is called a HDRI, a High Dynamic Range Image. Now, I believe my version actually supports this. It should do. Plugins. Yes, okay, cool. That'd be embarrassing if that didn't work. So this plugin, there's a lot of plugins inside of Unreal, but they're not all active at the same time, because if we activated all the plugins at the same time, the whole thing would all crash. So you activate what you need when you need it. So I'm going to activate HDRI capability. It's going to basically make a new light for us, but it's not on by default. So I'm going to come up to Edit, Plugins, and in my plugin menu here, I'm going to type in HDRI at the top, and I'm going to see HDRI Backdrop. I'm going to click that because it's unactive, so I'm going to activate it, and it's going to say you must restart Unreal to change to take effect. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to say yes, save selected. So I'm going to save a new scene. So I'm going to call this photo set. There you go. So it's bouncing Unreal back up again on the other monitor with my little banner, and there we go. We're back in. Dead fast. Now I saved that scene, so then I've got this little icon here. This is basically a level. It says photo set level. Double click that, I'm back in. So I'm going to turn off everything, and I'm going to go up to the little box here at the top. I'm going to come down to lights. There we go. I'm going to call HDRI Backdrop. Boom. There we go. So HDRI Backdrop is basically, there we go. It's a HDRI, it's a high dynamic range image. We've used these in Substance Painter because they're the things that naturally light our scene. You see these all the time in games, and they're a very, very cool map. They don't negate practical lights though. I mean, you use both of these kind of things together. Sometimes you'll only use practical lights. Sometimes you'll only use HDRI. Sometimes you'll use a combo of the two. But what these are is an image, and this image is wrapped around a piece of geometry. If I zoom right out, you'll be able to see. There we go. It's basically wrapped around a big scene, and these images. Basically, it's all about, it's kind of weird science again. They use pixel values to produce light, and also color from 0 to 1. It's very, very cool. Basically, the easiest thing to think about is you'll have a look at the scene, and the scene will have natural light in it, and you'll also have colors. So currently, this head is being lit with a bit of green from below, a bit of greeny brown from below, because it's grass, and then a bit of brown, a bit of blue from the top, although it's a cloudy day, which is very cool, and that's lighting the head in a minute. Now, of course, we can change the intensity of this. We've got the HDRI selected. We can change the intensity. Ooh, there you go. Now, I've obviously got my EV100 set to 0.01, so it's quite I'm not having the game choose my brightness. I don't want that at all, so I can choose that. I can also choose the size. Now the size is going to change a little bit how the light works. Oh, I've done a bad thing again. Okay, there you go. The size will change a little bit how the light works. It's basically just the smaller the image, the more concentrated the pixels are on the surface. The bigger the image, or the larger the surface that's been checked in it, the more kind of broad the information is. Okay. So this is being lit by a cube map. And we have this default one that gets brought in with it, and it's all fine, it's all good and stuff. But maybe this isn't actually what we want. Or you can also rotate it, obviously, you can rotate it around. And you can see how it affects the light in the face. It's all well and good, we can, whatever, this is all fine. But what if we want to have our own cube map? That's where this website's really good. So polyhaven.com. It's a free repository and stuff. Now, like I said in class, I do want to really kind of stipulate, you can technically download textures and models on here, but do not do that. And pass it off as your own stuff. I'd say, some of these are really good. Just download some models and see how it's being made. If you're really interested in some of the furniture, some of the appliances, download and see how they're made. Same thing for the materials. Download some of these materials, see how it's created. To inform your own work. Don't take this off as your own work. Or if you are going to use it, declare that you've used it so that we don't mark you for it. But what I'm going to do is come to HDRIs at the top. And at the top here you got, what kind of setup do we want? Do we want to do an outdoor? Do we want to do skies, indoors, studios, whatever's? So obviously I want to do a studio. So I'm going to come to studio and then here we are. So how HDRIs work. It is a 360-degree camera image. Taken on a special camera, and it uses all the pixel information on there. I can't necessarily, I don't really understand the real deep science of it, but what it's able to do is also produce light which is similar to that scene. So underneath a lot of these you'll see these little balls underneath. So you've got a glass ball, like a plastic ball, a metal ball, and another plastic ball. And it's showing you how reflective and how refractive and how the shadows work in each one of these scenes. It's all very cool. So like this one, for instance, has quite deep shadows. They're quite strong. Whereas this one here, the shadows are quite blurry because it's just a lot of daylight. I'm not 100% sure how they actually. It's very clever. This one has near no shadows because there's no direct light. It's all very soft. So you can come through and you can choose whatever you want. So I'm going to choose something. I'm going to choose. I'm spoiled for choice. This one, Small Studio 9. So I'm going to click that one, and I'm going to choose the resolution. So I'm going to choose it to be a 4K or an 8K or a 60. I'm going to choose 4K. I can choose its output, its file output. So you've got EXR and HDR, and I'm going to download this as a HDR. An EXR is a really good image format for, well, not for us, but it's a really kind of like lossless, really high quality image format. We're going to use HDR because that's the format that we'll use for the engine, and then we're just going to download it. So I'm going to download, boom, done. Oh, I accidentally downloaded too. I'll do that one. So all we're going to do is obviously locate the file on our desktop or our downloads folders, whatever, and I'm just going to literally click and drag that into, why is Photoshop opening? There we go. I'm going to click and drag that into our contents drawer. I could make a new folder for HDRIs if I wanted to. You can see it's going to import done. And now, have a look at the different coloured lines underneath it. So this is often like a quick reference system they got in there. Most things have their own colours. So because Geo's got this teal colour, Material's got this green colour, Textures have got a red colour, a level has orange, HDRIs have this like pinky salmony red. So I know that that's going to go into this. So I can click this and you can see it's going to go in because it's blue saying I'm going to accept this. I'm going to drop it in and there we are. We have our scene with our lights. All good. Now I should say as well, there is a lot of images that a lot of maps that come in with that whole plugin. So I don't have to go and search for all of them. There are some in there that do. There are a bunch that come in with it that might work for you. Some of them are kind of useless. That. Don't know what I'm looking at there. So have a play around, or find, that's the Unreal, that's Epic Offices. Have a find, have a play, have a look at. So I'm gonna probably just put that old basic one on. I'm gonna bring down the intensity down to about 0.5, actually 0.25, just a bit darker. And then I'm going to turn on some of these lights again, or at least the ones that work for me. There we go. Press G to get rid of that tool. Just make sure nothing's selected. There we go. And I've got lights in the scene. I've got my head in the scene. I've got my textures. It's lit to how I want it to be lit. You know, I'm happy with what I've got. Now I want to do a bake. You know, I want to bake out some lighting. Or not bake out some lighting. Sorry, I want to render. I want to render what I've got. Really, really easy. But there is a little bit of setup that I will actually say ahead of time. The layout does kind of go into this because I don't want to have everything really, really crammed in, because it's going to change the way the camera, as you can see, the camera kind of goes wacky if I do this. I want to give myself as much space as possible. And I also want to I can change my layout. Where's my layout? Not that one, you fool. There's a way of changing layouts and I'm completely drawing a blank on where it is. I don't generally change my layouts that often. So I'm pulling a little bit of a blank on where the layout stuff is. It's not there, is it? No. Yeah, pulling a bit of a blank. What I can do, I can just crush these boxes to the side so I can get like a nice view. Like that. Now I'm on my Cintiq monitor here, which isn't necessarily it's my main monitor is an ultra wide 4K, so it's really, really nice. This is on my Cintiq, so it's not 4K. It's a little bit smaller, so my renders will be a little bit on the smaller side. But all I've got to do is just make sure that I've got my camera set into a position that I like. So I'm going to click my head, make sure I'm focusing, find the right one, like that. I'm going to make sure I press G to get rid of all my gizmos. And just make sure I've got nothing selected in my outliner here, so nothing is highlighted. And I've got to make sure that I'm happy with what I'm looking at. Oh, you know, I've not looked at... so I'll show you another thing after this. I completely forgot about something very important. How we take an actual screenshot of this is super, super simple. Top left of the screen here, we've got little 3 lines. We click that, and then we come down to... There it is. There's layouts. We come down to high resolution screenshot. We click that, and then we say, well, we can specify. So let's specify. So I can say just like that if I wanted to. Screen size multiplier is it's almost like controlling the pixel. You know, if I put this to 2, it's going to be twice as big. If I put this to 4, it's going to be 4 times as big. It just makes it, you know, more pixels. Nothing else we need to change, so I'm going to set that to say modify 2. You know, if I wanted to, I could region select my thing if I wanted to, or I could say no, I'm going to do the entire region. So let me just do a little bit of a crop like that, and I can capture. So I'm going to do a capture, and there we go. So it saves it to a folder, and there is my capture. So I did this at 2 times modifier, so it's a little bit nice. There you go. All good. Now I did say I'd missed something. I have completely missed something. That's really important. We're not just at the behest of whatever we can see here. We can manipulate stuff. We can change stuff in the camera. We can change the way stuff looks. We can do a lot of stuff. But it's not necessarily like here in front of us. We've got to bring something into the scene to allow us to actually start to change stuff. I'm talking like, you know, color grading, vignettes, that kind of stuff. Very, very simple. I'm going to come back into this menu again. I'm going to come down to volumes. And I'm going to come down to post-processing volume or post-process volume. And then you get a little cube in scene somewhere. Again, I'm going to bring that to the center of the world. There we go. There we go. So you get this little box. And this box, everything that is, if the camera is within this box, this whole effect is generated. Outside of the box, we don't see the results. Inside the box, we see the results. That's cool, although a little bit annoying. So first of all, before I start showing this off a little bit, I'm going to make sure that this box affects the entire scene instead of just this actual region where it's at. So I'm going to come up to, with it selected, so I've got my post-process selected. In this details menu here, I'm going to come up to the search bar and I'm just going to start typing infinite, or I can just type in INF for infinite. And I get post-processing volume settings, infinite extend unbound. If I tick that, you won't see anything happen, but now all the changes we're going to make are infinite. They're in the scene. They're not just within this box. So what is this whole post-processing volume? Well, it's a processing volume. It's just like stuff inside Photoshop. You know, it allows us to do some stuff. So with it selected in our details menu, we have a few things. We have bloom, for instance. So I can turn on bloom, and the intensity, and I can start to, you know, mess with the bloom a little bit. And there's lots of settings for bloom. There's exposure, so I can actually change the exposure. Although I've turned it off, so it doesn't really, for me that's not going to do anything because I've turned it off and I'm controlling it through this. Chromatic aberration, the thing I get told off a lot about for using. Broken TV syndrome. So I can say just on the outside. There we go. Yes, I can. Just on the outside of the scene, I can have the post-process, the chromatic aberration kind of kicking in. I use it a lot. I am a fan of it. Dirt mask is something that's really, really cool, but it's no point using it here. If you ever play games where, you know, dirt splashes on a screen and you can see it, or there's like you're in a space helmet, you can kind of see like grease or fingerprints on the space helmet. It's all done through a dirt mask, and it's literally a black and white image which is laid on top, or sometimes a color image, and it applies it kind of applies that dirt to the screen. There's a lot of in-camera sciencey stuff, so you can change the shutter speed, you can change the ISO, you can change the aperture. If you're really into cameras, that'll make sense. It kind of goes over my head, I won't lie. Depth of field is great for when you're coming up doing environments, but for us it's not super useful. And then you've got global saturation setting, contrast, gamma. You know, you start messing with stuff, you know. You got temperature, we can change the temperature of the scene. Very cool. Shadows, midtones, all this kind of stuff is, you know, stuff we see in Photoshop. There's film. Film is good, but it's got some weird terminology, which is, I had it explained to me, and it made sense when it was explained to me, but it doesn't, I can't remember. You've got slope, toe, shoulder, back clip, and white clip, black clip and white clip. And it's more in-depth controls for your scene, for your image. This global illumination one's really nice. Global illumination is basically how light bounces around a scene. So it's set to lumen by default, but then you can set it to like date. I quite like that the screen space beta. It's quite nice. Oh, they got lumen global illumination there, so that's a whole thing you can play with. There's going to be tons of documentation about this. Ray tracing refractions. We've got nothing that refracts, so there's no point in using any of that. Tons of stuff, you know, tons of stuff you can have a play with. Some of this stuff doesn't look like it. So there is some stuff which you've got the options for here, but you have to go in and turn certain stuff on to have it work, or turn certain settings to a certain thing. Again, I really wouldn't worry about it too much. Just have a play. Have a play. You know, the only one I might change in this is in global illumination. Set that to, yeah, screen space beta. I quite like that. Pops my shadows a little bit. Because then you can just set up your scene again. You know, make sure it's nice and big. Make sure your gizmos are turned off. Nothing selected. You know, let's do a 4 on this one. So it's saying it might crash the engine. I don't care. Let's have some fun with it. I'm going to capture it, see if it crashes. It isn't. So I've done like a 4 times the size mega image. That doesn't look super good actually. It kind of looks kind of crappy. It kind of looks very bit crushed and something like around here. So yeah, maybe do like 1 or 2. 2 is quite nice. This size multiplier. Yeah, that's better. Much better. And that's how you take these. That's how you take these lights and shadows and stuff. I don't want us to worry too much about going into the real bitty stuff about the lighting, because lighting inside Unreal still has a bit of an axe to grind with people, or people have an axe to grind with the lighting in Unreal. We're not looking for super hyper realistic. We're just looking to, you know, get into the engine and light it nicely. So that's a longish video going over the whole setup process. Really, that was a lot of waffling. Getting this scene set up takes no time at all, and you can have an experiment and a play. And then when you got something set up that you like, it's very easy to go through and, you know, turn certain things on, turn certain things off. You know, you could do a whole set of renders. Oh, that's weird. What's that? Oh, it's like a reflection on the water. Ooh. Yeah, you can do like a whole set of renders in here with like this practical lighting setup, very very moody. Or they could do a setup with just a HDRI, and literally all I'm doing is just turning them on the outline here. I've just got it collapsed on the side. You know, so you can do whatever you want, really, innit? There you go. Yeah. And just make it as nice as you can, to the best of your ability. Very, very cool. And hopefully people use Unreal more and more. It's a really fantastic platform for obviously making games. Obviously that's its main purpose, but you'll be surprised how many people do really, really nice renders inside here. But they've gone through and properly made a really nice setup. The materials are on point, the lights are on point. They've done loads of post-processing. They've gone in and changed some of the settings. They've gone in and started messing with the lighting a lot more. This is a whole thing you have to spend quite a while to get set up. But to get to grips with it, you know, boom. And this is like an older version as well. This is like, I think this is a version behind what we have at school. So the lighting, I believe the lighting that's actually nicer in the new one. It always improves in like these little increments. But yeah, that's it. That's setting up our scenes. That's how to bring stuff in, set up a material, bring in some lights, move stuff around, turn stuff on and off, navigate around the scene, bring in a post-processing, set up your HDRIs, do your renders, you know, everything. And like I said, it'll take you an afternoon to get sort of stuff done. Cool. I'll see you in the next one.